It's October 14th, 1992. We're at Atlanta Fulton County Stadium in Atlanta, Georgia for Game 7 of the NLCS, where the Braves trail the Pirates 2-1 in the bottom of the ninth. With 2 outs and the bases loaded, one of these teams is about to reach the World Series. And they're both about to be involved in one of the greatest endings in MLB history. But they don't know that. They're just waiting. Each team hoping their recent fortunes can change before it's too late. It's been a long road just to get to this point, which makes what's about to come even bigger. Let's rewind. At this point, bottom of the ninth in Game 7, these two teams are probably a little sick of each other. Less than a year ago, they were in the same situation, only Pittsburgh played host. The 1991 NLCS was a fairly tight back-and-forth series. But in that 7th game, Atlanta took a 3-run lead in the first inning and John Smoltz earned a complete game shutout. Then, in the 92 regular season, the Braves again edged out the Pirates, taking the series 7-5 with 11 of those games decided by just 1 or 2 runs. Those 2 games wound up being all that separated them come the postseason, and at the start of this series, Atlanta made the most of their home field advantage. They jumped on Doug Drabek in Game 1, and aside from a Jose leaned solo shot, Smoltz again held his own. Game 2 wasn't any better for Pittsburgh, as their starter Danny Jackson couldn't get out of the second. With 3 innings of 4 or more runs, the Braves headed to Pittsburgh up 2-0. The teams traded the first 2 at Three Rivers Stadium, but with Atlanta a game away from the World Series, Pittsburgh's bats finally woke up. Steve Avery gave up 4 runs, he lasted just a third of an inning, and the Pirates cruised to a 7-1 victory. Tom Glavine fared even worse back in Atlanta. The Braves surrendered 8 runs in the second, and Glavine got yanked before registering an out. But as far as tonight goes, the pitching has been much better, for both teams really. Pittsburgh has just squeaked out a little bit more offense. And having battled out of a 3-1 hole in the series, the Pirates are now 1 out away from something that's eluded them since 1979. That year, they beat the Baltimore Orioles in 7 games to win the World Series. But from there, the 80s weren't kind to Pittsburgh. Attendance plummeted, hitting a point that the governor of Pennsylvania stepped in to help reverse the trend and prove baseball in Pittsburgh remained viable. With the team losing millions annually, in October of 1985, the franchise was sold to local investors led by the mayor. That meant the city kept its team, but got a new front office, a new manager in Jim Leland, and a new face of the franchise. Barry Bonds made his major league debut in May of 1986 and settled in quick. He led all NL rookies in home runs, RBIs, stolen bases, and immediately rejuvenated the fan base who returned in record numbers. Then, with a new decade, came new hope. The Pirates took the NL East and finally returned to the postseason in 1990 and 91. However, even with the newfound success, the old problems remain the same. Playing in one of the nation's smallest markets, they lost $7 million in 1991. As a result, the money just wasn't there to retain all of the talent that had helped return them to relevance. Despite making 4 straight All-Star games, there was no chance of re-signing Bobby Bonilla. And in March, they were forced to trade away 20-win All-Star John Smiley. The guys they still had on the roster could see the writing on the wall. That included Bonds. While the former NL MVP did get paid, the Pirates avoided a long-term commitment. His frustration got to the point that the club considered dealing him in March, and one of the possible destinations just happened to be Atlanta. But the club thought better of it, and many accepted that this would be the last year of Bonds as a Buck. The same went for 1990's NL Cy Young Award winner Doug Drabek. With more stars seemingly destined to depart, the 1992 season felt like Pittsburgh's last chance before the window could fully shut. And they responded by winning the NL East for the 3rd straight year, this time by 9 games. Drabek once again reached 15 wins, and all Bonds did was lead the league in on-base percentage, slugging, runs scored, the list goes on. As he put up MVP numbers, the Pirates got another shot. But tonight, like most of the series, has been a different story for Bonds. Hanging on to this lead, it's been the rest of his team that has gotten the Pirates this close. Back in the first, Bonds did reach base on an intentional walk, but that's because it was open after Andy Van Slyke doubled and advanced Alex Cole to third. Orlando Merced brought Cole home on a sac fly, and that score held until the sixth when Van Slyke singled. Jay Bell came from second to extend the lead, and Drabek got a little more cushion. Atlanta made their biggest push later that inning when they managed to load the bases with nobody out after this perfect bunt by Otis Nixon. But an unassisted double play by Jeff King was quickly followed by a lineout to get Drabek out of the jam. After losing his first two starts of the series, he was back to looking like the ace Pittsburgh needed. But was it enough? Atlanta's tough. Their offense has struggled tonight, but with the bases loaded, it's come together at the right time. And this is a team for which a few years ago, making the World Series was laughable. As Bonds was pulling Pittsburgh out of its funk, Bobby Cox was trying to do the same in Atlanta. He rejoined the Braves as general manager in 1985, inheriting a team that had just finished 5th in the NL West. They continued to flirt with last place, bottoming out in '88 when they lost 106 games. Cox had enough in 1990, and he fired his second manager in 5 seasons, then took the reins himself. By then, his roster makeover was well underway, and John Schuerholz came in to help finish it off. Around this time, draft picks Tom Glavine, David Justice, and Steve Avery had begun establishing themselves. Cox traded for a then unknown John Smoltz and shored up the rest of the roster with free agent deals for Sid Bream, Deion Sanders, and Terry Pendleton ahead of the 1991 season. As a result, the Braves that year became one of the first teams to jump from last place to first in their division. Ironically, this was also done by the '91 Minnesota Twins, who they'd meet in the World Series. The Braves took a 3-2 lead, but the Twins pulled off extra inning wins in both 6 and 7 to send Cox's squad home empty-handed. But considering that was Atlanta's 3rd playoff appearance since the 1950s, they had the National League MVP and Cy Young Award winners, not to mention even more talent waiting to be brought up, the turnaround was here. And it's almost perfect how the Braves have loaded the bases. They've got a draft pick on 3rd, a free agent signing on 2nd, and an in-season trade on 1st. Now, remember the bit about this being Drabek's best game of the series? Well, there's a reason that ain't Drabek. Leland kept his starter out there to record the final 3 outs. Drabek had done well against the entire Braves lineup, and especially the heart of the order. He had kept the 3 guys due up to just 1 hit in their combined 9 at-bats. On the series, Pendleton especially had struggled, as he stepped to the plate 6 of 29. But on the 3rd pitch, that became 7 of 30. He led off with a stand-up double, and before the Pirates could blink, the tying run was at the plate. Justice sent one straight at Lind, who let the ball get past him and set up runners on the corners.
A man who has made only 6 errors during the regular season, and it could turn out to be the biggest error of his life.
From there, Sid Bream, the former Pirate and now potential Braves winning run, faced 4 pitches, had no reason to swing, and took a walk. Drabek's 129th and final pitch of the night loaded the bases with nobody out. A fun jam for reliever Stan Belinda to work with. On his 2nd pitch, Ron Gant took Belinda deep, easily within Bonds' reach, but enough for Pendleton to score safely from 3rd. Next up was Damon Berryhill, but this at-bat actually needs additional context. See that home plate umpire? Now, look at this umpire. So that guy in the blazer is John McSherry, who was the home plate ump at first pitch tonight. But in the middle of the 2nd, he got extremely dizzy and nauseous and would be taken to the hospital. The first base umpire, Randy Marsh, filled in for McSherry, and the main reason that's important in the 9th is Marsh's strike zone is a bit tighter. And after Berryhill fouled off the first pitch, he watched some balls that back in the 1st inning would have had a better chance at being strikes. But Marsh gave him first.
Ball 4. Oh, so close was the last pitch to Berryhill.
And once again, bases loaded. After Brian Hunter floated one to shallow center, we found ourselves here. And of all the talent that Cox and Schuerholz have put on this team, it's Francisco Cabrera pinch hitting to decide the game. It's almost impressive the production crew was ready with that chyron. So, the good news for the Braves. Cabrera is coming off a season where he recorded career bests in batting average, on-base percentage, and slugging. But he did that on just 11 plate appearances. In 4 seasons, the backup catcher has been used pretty sparingly, but he's had his moments. In August of last year, he delivered a 9th inning, 3-run shot to tie up a game against the Reds that the Braves would eventually win in 13. A victory that became key as they took the division by just a single game. But with a number of catchers ahead of him, Cabrera was sent to AAA come opening day of '92. He was called up a handful of times before making the Braves' playoff roster at the end of August. His addition became even more important when starting catcher Greg Olson was taken out by Ken Caminetti, leaving him with a broken leg and dislocated ankle just 2 weeks before the NLCS. And back to tonight, it comes down to Cabrera, who is pinch hitting for his only appearance of the game. After taking 2 balls, he almost ended it on the 3rd pitch, sending one foul but also out of the reach of Bonds, who had been cheating surprisingly far to the left. And that brings us here. The pitch that will decide the game, the series, possibly the fate of a franchise. For the Braves, it would mean back-to-back World Series appearances for a team that just 2 years ago was hanging out in the basement. It would solidify the fact that they weren't one-year wonders, and the moves made by Cox put them in a place to threaten for seasons to come. For Pittsburgh, they're on the other side of the same hill, hoping to finally have a shot at the whole thing after consecutive NLCS disappointments. Many expect it to be their last chance with this core and hope a trip to the World Series can at least put off thoughts of having to once again replace superstars. With the bases loaded, 2 outs, and the winning run on second, Francisco Cabrera faces Stan Belinda for one last time. Welcome to a moment in history.
The 2-0, now the 2-1. Line drive and a base hit! Just as the score of the tying run. Green to the plate. And he is safe! Safe at the plate! The Braves go to the World Series!
And then they lost the World Series again. But thanks for watching. If you liked this, then check out the Rewinder playlist. My recommendation would be this one about the 2012 Premier League finish, especially if you don't follow soccer. It's ridiculous, and not knowing the sport can actually make the ending more exciting. Make sure you subscribe to SB Nation, and see you soon.